So we are putting up fencing today. Buddy JR is doing the work. Wheeled Services does the tractor, services the tractor for us, does fencing, does all sorts of useful agriculture things. So they're putting up this, what do you call this, JR?
Cattle fence.
Cattle fence. Putting up the cattle fence here. I'm planting some areca palms because we've got this ditch line right here, and then that's our neighbor's property begins over that way. Want to kind of block us out. Also have a second living hedge. So we've got the infrastructure structure, which is like right here. It's going to hold in the cattle and animals, dogs, things like that. We've got a secondary kind of privacy and way to keep it intact. We've got winds, hurricanes, things like that. So having some sort of living hedge planted behind it be helpful. And then also our neighbor loves to have us like super bright spotlight on occasionally, not all the time, but occasionally at night. It's like, what are you doing? So I'm gonna block them out with these arecas. They don't need anything. I'm gonna basically just put some wood chips here, trim them up a little bit, put a little bit of fertilizer on them. That'll be it. That'll be the last thing I have to do with them. Also, from time to time, certainly once a decade, this ditch will fill up, and probably the water will probably come to like the front end of that truck, like the nose of the GMC there. So yeah, the areca palms will do well when they're submerged in water for a few days after a hurricane, tropical storm like event. I haven't seen it yet. Like we've seen some gnarly storms out here, like Cat 4s, almost 5s, 5 mile an hour, under 5. So like 150, we had 151, 154 mile an hour winds out here 2 years ago. And a lot of wind and not a lot of rain. So if we get a serious rainstorm, like tropical depression type of stuff, well, these will be good. These will be good situations. I'm gonna walk to the end here before I get like locked out. Have to walk the whole property around. Got enforcement here, so he's got this guy all rigged up so it'll provide some strength to the structure as he like goes ahead and begins to pull on it with that winch, which is attached to the tractor. And then we've got to clean up this tote. It's got some vegetable oil in there. We've been using vegetable oil to start some bonfires. It's been working really well. And I will tell you, we spilled some, and it's just like canola oil. And I was telling Coach Kurt, I was like, dude, we're gonna have so many ants here tomorrow. And he's like, nah, like that seed oil, like they don't want it, bro. That's for your mozzarella sticks. It's like straight poison. And he's right. So since he made that statement, I haven't really consumed much. Sometimes, a little bit here and there, because it's in everything. You get meat, get anything, man. It's always cooked in some sort of seed oil. Only oil you should be cooking in, like 3 of them, like animal fat tallows, olive oil, or coconut oil. If it's not that, you really don't want to be messing with it. Canola oil, vegetable oil, soy oil, all that stuff. And it's in a lot of condiments. It's in a lot of everything. And so my wife and I have been like, last 2 months, just not been touching it. We went out the other day to a burger joint. They had these great fries. I was like, I'm gonna get some of these fries. And afterwards we were both like, oh, I haven't had fries or anything like that, anything fried, in about 2 months. And we were like, oh, we cannot tolerate this stuff anymore. So anyway, works great for fire starter. I've got a little bonfire there, a lot of green material on there. We'll let it sit for about a month, light it up, then toss some canola oil on it, burn through it in about a day. And hopefully right after that point we'll be getting cattle out here. Pretty excited about getting cattle out here. We did the fencing, my guys and I, last year when we had a slow period. We did the whole front and sides, and we did this side and it just didn't come out right, and I needed to have that fencing put up because we just, like, the front we did 3-board slat, and JR's putting some barbed wire up, and so we have like 3 boards basically, and then barbed wire in between, because we've got some like neighborhood aesthetics, like the community, like that's just the rules on the front boards. But on the sides we can get away with just this and then a top piece. So, but he had to make it strong enough where it will hold in, an animal if they push on it, lean on it, things like that. So he's working that line. I'm going to clean this up here over the next month or so, get some grass seed in here. We're gonna thin up the canopies a little bit. This is like the last piece of the property. I've cleared it, I mulched it, but I haven't been back here since then. And then hopefully we'll be able to go down to the animal auction, pick up 2 calves, and and get going. 2 or 3. I think I'll start with that because I don't know what I'm doing. JR does. He does a lot of that stuff, so he's going to kind of coach me through it. We're going to do rotational grazing practice. We're going to move them with a mobile electric net. You guys might see us do that with the chickens. We do that in the food forest. We do that all over now. I use them to like do the weeding, like an area like this. If I wanted that like brought down to dirt, just put an electric fence around it, mobile electric fence, put maybe like 10 chickens on it for like 2 days, done. Be like all black scratch, put some mulch on top of it. Don't have to think about it for another year. And so we're gonna do that so you kind of grid pattern out our thing, see how many grazing days we have, let the grass get to 1.5 feet, 2 feet. We want to stay inside what's called an S curve. So at the if you cut grass to like, let's say 1 inch, it's outside the S curve. So it might take 2-3 weeks to get to 4 inches. And then it might take, I don't know, another 2-3 weeks to get from 4 inches to 12. And then, you know, from 12 to 18, it might take like another 5 weeks. So the S curve would be staying from like 14 down to 4, like where it's just like you got 10 inches of green material, and it's going to come back in 4 weeks. Like that's how you can maximize the amount of green material you're growing, as opposed to like if you're mowing lawn and you're using petroleum to maintain it, you're constantly wanting to stay underneath the S curve because you don't want to have to show up and mow 5, 6, 10 inches of lawn, you know, grass blades. So I've got some seeds here that I just put out. You can kind of see them up in here. Where they at? It's hard to see. It's going to be difficult to see them on camera. I can kind of see them like right here, kind of laying in there. Didn't have to penetrate them into the soil. It's just a rye seed. This whole area should be like blazing green in about 3 weeks. Should have a lot of good nutrition. We'll get some baby calves out here, probably 2 or 3, and maybe some sheep at some point. And we'll begin that process. Have a lot of these cages. These are all edible plants. I've got vanilla, like I've got an ice cream plant, which is wild. It's like, I've got chocolate pudding. I know that sounds crazy, but like all these tropical plants, they seem to be working well. Mulberries, I've got star fruit, blueberries, jackfruit. I mean, lots and lots of stuff here. So the idea here is to have walking paths around the outside perimeter, pasture in between. We'll let the pasture get up to like my knee probably, and then we'll have the cattle graze it down. Then we'll let it rest for 6 or 8 weeks or whatever, however long it takes for them to go around the entire property and come back around again. And we'll have a walking path so we can still enjoy it, we'll still have access to it, and not have to walk through like, you know, wet, dew-ridden, like, you know, pasture grass. Plus there's going to be, hopefully if we do a good job, we have a lot of carbon here, a lot of nitrates, a lot of things to attract animals. We're going to have rabbits in there, which means we're going to probably attract some snakes. We're going to have some squirrels, might have some turtles walking through, probably some rats, mice, vermin type of things, which is all good. Like we want all those things here so that we can attract life to the farm. And we want just tons and tons of life. There's a great documentary on Netflix. It's called The Biggest Little Farm. Incredible documentary. Basically, they buy a desolate 200 acres, I believe it was, in California. I mean, just monoculture, just dead. Even the beehives are just dead. And over a 7-year period, they turn it into an abundant Garden of Eden. I mean, it's just incredible. We're in the beginning phases of that. This was all oak tree canopy. I forestry mulched this. There's a lot of organic material underneath this. I then brought in some topsoil, just a little bit to like use it for grading, then seeded it. And that was about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And we haven't had any animals on it. We've just been mowing it with petroleum and like maintaining it with like time and machine power, which is annoying. I don't want to spend my Saturdays or, you know, free time like having to mow this often. So, you know, we're just about ready to get some livestock on it, and then, you know, the cows will go, and then we'll have mobile chicken tractors going behind the cows like 4 days after. So the chickens will push out their droppings, spread it out, go after the worms and bugs that are attracted to those droppings, keep everything sanitary, and then we'll move them on. It should just be a sweet regenerative cycle. All the nutrients, all the minerals should just be constantly filling into the soil. And if you haven't had regenerated food, like especially like from a farm that's 5, 6, 7, 10 years old. I've been to a place that was like 9 or 10 years old, and I was eating some of their stuff, and it's like it's not the same. Like it's you have food, you have grocery store stuff, and then you have like this regenerative farm produce. It's just incredible. So we're hoping to be able to make that happen, make it like a loop cycle, and then over a certain amount of period of time, maybe 5 years, 7 years, ideally it'll just, I mean, maybe even at this point, like where we create the infrastructure, we create the systems, and then the whole thing just takes care of itself. So I don't really have to do much. I'll probably come out here once a year as these grow, trim them, prune them. But ultimately, animals will do that. They'll help us with that too. I'll take the cages off of it. The deer will be hanging out here. Right now we're trying to keep the deer away from them because they're little. But you know, as we create awesome pasture, and we want at least 7 varieties of different things. So we've got different flowers in here. We've got Argentine bahia, we have Pensacola bahia, we have rye, we have buckwheat, you know, all these different pieces of grass. You know, North America, we see monocultures in lawn care, and people are like, oh, I want just a beautiful lawn, all the same, put poison on it, keep it green, keep no weeds in it. And actually what you want is like not weeds, you want different varieties. So you want we have Bermuda out here, for example. The roots go way deep, so they're pulling nutrients from 6, 8, 12 feet down in the ground. We've got other things, the roots are shallower, so it's pulling nutrients from the top layer, it's creating cover, it's creating moisture, it's keeping moisture in the soil. If you go through a drought period, you're not going to notice it as much. You're not going to grain feed or hay feed your cattle. And ideally, that's how nature wants to be. Nature wants to be like a polyculture, and all sorts of things. And so we're just experimenting, throwing things together, figuring out what works best for Florida food forests, and like how can it just maintain. And then through us setting it up, it just should be a reoccurring cycle with minimal inputs. So at some point in time, we'll right now we're putting in way more than we're getting out, for sure. I mean, I've got JR out here, I've got checks written for that, I've got material coming in, but at some point in time, you know, this infrastructure should be a good 15-20 year infrastructure, and I should be able to ride it for the next 14 years and have no fertilizer inputs, no water costs, none of that stuff. So got a neat design. I don't know when we're going to do it, but for the pond over there, you can see that we've got some dirt we have to move and rocks that have to be set up. We're doing some landscaping with it, but we're going to ideally do a windmill that will be wind powered, and then have some solar panels off to the south side. And it's going to have a shallow well, and it will top the pond, and then the pond will overflow and create a small stream-like thing for the cattle. Cattle will drink from that, and then when the chickens are rolling through, there'll be little minnow fish in there, little like mosquito fish, and the chickens will be going for those things. So that's where they're going to get their protein. That's where they're going to get their water source. We'll be able to irrigate the land if we want to for no cost. It'll just be wind, solar, battery, and then in theory, if we were to leave it for a period of time, it would just happen. You know, with or without me, this piece of land should just continue to do its thing. It should just repropagate itself. All sorts of stuff. See a hawk flying out here. So we're starting to attract all of the people to the party. Like we want all the animals to show up, and want them to all hang out here and get their food, their nutrition, bring things in, not just have a monoculture of corn, poison, Roundup. We don't want that. We don't want that in our bodies. We don't want none of that. So we will do some planting, get this fence line done. See you on the next one.